Now for this particular story, there are not any images and videos of this guy, John Hatchet. So I'm going to have to make this particular video as like an article reading. Now this article is from the New York Post, and this is from March 5th, 2007 at 10 a.m. it was posted. It says, he was New York's killing machine, John Bloody Hatcher. So his name is John Hatcher, but they called him Bloody Hatchet. The brother of a minister has admitted to involvement in more than 80 shootings, including 30 homicides, while operating a notorious gang that made tens of millions of dollars selling crack cocaine and marijuana. During a 2-decade reign of terror, Hatcher and his gang, the Rugby Boys, littered the streets in the heart of Brooklyn with victims and dead bodies, authorities said. He was the crack epidemic, said John Gilbride, special agent in charge of Drug Enforcement Administration's New York office, comparing him to murderers Lorenzo Fat Cat Nicholas and Kenneth Supreme McGriff and infamous Harlem drug lord Nicky Barnes. But unlike the others, brief reign as crack and heroin kingpins, Hatcher rings flourished like no other. Before the DEA finally mounted a 6-year operation buying 10 bags of crack that snared him. Rather than face a possible death sentence, prosecution Hatcher 43 spilled his guts. Veteran federal agent and hardened homicide detectives were left slack-jawed with disbelief as Hatcher methodically detailed a litany of murder and mayhem that took him an astonishing 4 months to tell. There were times when we actually had to stop him and say, that's enough for today. DEA Special Agent John Perfetti said, recalling a particular grim session when Hatcher described an assault in which one of his henchmen was stabbed, shot, choked, set on fire, and then dosed with a pill of urine. The victim survived after pretending he was dead and gave an interview to detectives and Star Jones, the former co-host of ABC's The View, who was then a Brooklyn district attorney. When the man was released from the hospital, Hatcher paid 2 hitmen $5,000 to finish him off. Hatcher's brutality and sophisticated criminality belied his upbringing by loving parents who owned a record store in Canarsie and raised 3 other children, including a minister and a U.S. Navy Academy officer. But by age 12, Hatcher was shown his propensity for crime, running with the crowd that committed robberies and burglaries and were tied to fearsome Jamaican drug dealers. His fledgling talents were noticed by a local fagin-like hood who recruited him. It was like Oliver Twist with a gun, said Daniel Anderson, DEA associate special agent in charge in New York. Added Perfetti, he was a natural, starting with pick and pocket and escalating into robberies and burglaries. By the end of high school, Hatcher was forming a gang of his own. He recruited kids, dubbed Rugby Boys, who played football and basketball when they were not selling drugs. One fearsome teen, Tyrone Hunter, was made Hatcher's deputy. Coupling a businessman's acumen with iron fists, Hatcher established control over several key crack dens in Bedford-Stuyvesant and East New York, and skillfully built an empire with scores of workers in the heart of the city's most populated borough. If a rival tried to poach his territory, someone would be paid. He shot people just to make a point, leaving them wounded in the stomach and legs, Perfetti said. Hatcher lived large. He had a spacious apartment in Park Slope, hordes of women, superfly clothes, and flashy luxury cars, and treated himself and his crew to lavish Caribbean trips. But in 1991, he was with a couple of his henchmen and mistook undercover cops for rival dealers. One of his crew opened fire, grazing an officer. Hatcher was the only one caught. He did not rat and spent 8 years in prison. When he was released, he quickly reclaimed his throne. But 2 seemingly unrelated crime matters, a murder in East New York and a credit card scam in Alabama, ultimately toppled his empire. On January 27, 2000, a city bus driver made the mistake of being a go-between in Colombian heroin deal with Hatcher, who shot and killed him and stole his drugs. Rugby Boys Charles Thomas was identified as a suspect. 7 months later, in Alabama, Thomas, nicknamed Boo, and his Brooklyn phone number showed up on a piece of paper linked to a ring ordering hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of merchandise from Home Depot. The DEA joined U.S. Postal Inspector James Button and NYPD detectives in early 2001 and started with $10 bag buys, launched their probe that snared a weak link. Lieutenant in Hatcher's operation, fearing Bloody Hatchet, the lieutenant cooperated, and Hatcher finally was scooped in a massive roundup May 13, 2002. Hatchet started spilling the beans. "I am not going to do anyone else's time. They will do their own," referring to his 8-year stint in prison over the cop-wounded case. With the treasure love of case to cherry pick from involving Hatchet, some which had already been attributed to others by the NYPD, Assistant Brooklyn U.S. Attorneys Kristen Duggan and Scott Morvillo on the federal agents zeroed in on 5 killings. "It took 6 years to peel back layer after layer to unveil these horrific crimes," Gilbride said. Investigators dug up old witnesses and other evidence they used during the 3-week trial that ended last month with the racketeering and murder conviction of the final bosses of Hatchet gang, Hunter and Adrian Payne. Hatchet, who testifies for 2 days, is being held in federal prison, and along with Hunter and Payne is awaiting sentencing in May. He expected to receive what amounts to a life sentence. Alright, now some of the things that was left out in this article is basically that Hatchet was making $1 million a week. I learned this from another article from another website. They said that's how much money he was making. And he himself was responsible for about 30 murders. He was involved in over 80 shootings. So this guy was like the number 2 king of killers, because number 1 is Wayne Perry. This guy, Bloody Hatchet, it seemed like he was just cutting people down. They said just to make a point, he would shoot them in the leg and the stomach, leave them wounded and bleeding. So this guy was a thug from Brooklyn. But just like most of these guys, who go around doing a lot of things, they usually end up telling. A lot of drug lords, a lot of people who killed a lot of people, they usually end up telling when they get caught. Because they know when they get caught, they're going to get football numbers or life or some kind of death penalty or something. So it's like they go throughout their whole lives being this gangster. Everybody feared them. But then when they get caught, they start snitching. So it's like you went through all of that just to end up throwing it all away by messing your name up in the very end for being called the snitch and a rat. But obviously, this guy is no joke. This guy, Bloody Hatchet, as far as, putting it down in the streets, he sounds like he's official when it comes to putting in work. Obviously, he was doing so many things, but the fact that he's snitching, that kind of like threw everything off. Because now you just lost all your respect. You just lost all your credit for all the work you have done. But other than that, this guy, he had flashy cars. They say he had many females. He was just living the best life ever, him and his crew. There was a bunch of dangerous people that'll shoot you just to make an example, even if they didn't have a good reason to do it. They had over 80 shootings. He did over 30 murders. So he was on some psycho serial killer type stuff. So he sound like, like he's somebody that everybody feared. That they looked at him like some kind of big mafia type guy. He's getting everybody hit like that.